Welcome to Beyond Just Business, the podcast for those who want more. More clarity, more direction, and potentially more meaning. We explore the thinking behind success, the habits that shape performance, and the questions that go deeper than profit margins. If you're ready to challenge the obvious and rethink the way life and business work, you are absolutely in the right place. Now, you're very welcome to season 2 of Beyond Just Business with myself, Andrew Rattigan, and Paul Davis. You're very welcome, Paul. How are you today?
I'm all good. Top of the morning.
Oh, that's good. Hitting the old Irish notes as well. Save that one for March 17th, would you, just in case? We got to hit that American demographic, get them to come over and dye the rivers green again. So you're all very welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about something that will actually spark different ideas in each person, and it's about legacy. And I think when we discussed this before the call, Paul, I thought that there's a number of things that pop into my head when I think of legacy. That you set out in a career and someone may have had a roadmap by virtue of family. So let's say you've had someone who's been in a particular position or company or whatever role it may have been. And the role of legacy is just front and center. You start here, you build it up, you put your money away. This is how your trajectory goes. But I think legacy nowadays is moved away a little bit because tech has changed how we live. People rarely stay in jobs forever. But when I say the word legacy, what comes to mind from your perspective, or equally clients you may have come across and what their perspective on it is?
There's kind of the two aspects. One is where typically you get a family-run business. So when they think of legacy, it's typically around succession. So whether they've been running the business for a while, coming up to retirement, or they've had a health scare, one or the other, and they're thinking about, okay, so who is actually going to take over the business? So that's on one side. And then on another side, I've got a whole other demographic of business owners that are thinking more, what's the impact that they want to make? So not necessarily around the business and making profits, that's key within it, but it's what's the impact that they're making on the community. So it might be from a foundation perspective, tying the business in with something that they're going to do with the local community. What are they going to do to make a difference in the world? So it might be a passion project, for one better word, whereby they, in some shape or form, it could be that they've had a child with disabilities and therefore now they're using the business as a vehicle to either promote that particular charity or they want to fundraise for something that's going on in the world. So they're looking at it for as a vehicle to support that legacy side of things. So one is kind of like a personal legacy, if that makes sense. And then the other is more a succession legacy.
Do you think legacy, the concept of legacy, goes above a lot of people's heads nowadays? Because when I think of how people live, so many people are still so caught up. We've access to so much information. And I said before this chat that it can be extraordinarily overwhelming, that as opposed to having limited access of, let's say, one book on how to do something, there are millions of books, millions of interpretations, and millions of ways, in inverted commas, we can do things. Do you think people are too busy to understand? Let's say if you imagine the older types of, let's say the movie with your man from My Left Foot, Daniel Day-Lewis, where he had There Will Be Blood. It was There Will Be Blood where he became the I'm an oil man. And his legacy was this creation of wealth through purchasing or acquiring or taking of land. So that's a physical manifestation of legacy.
Yeah.
But then maybe that's obviously you're going to have an element of that now. But is that something that almost goes unnoticed by the general population because they assume legacy needs to be Rockefeller, Buffett, Trump, whoever else, as opposed to what it could be, like you said, on a more localized level?
A bit of both. I think, okay, so what I'm seeing or what I'm experiencing is go back to your early part, people are too busy. They're literally getting like that. They're getting information, data thrown at them left and center. They don't really have too much time to think. They have a lot of stresses within the business themselves in terms of they're trying to keep the business going. With everything that's going on in the world right now at the moment, some businesses are being impacted, others aren't. They're trying to get staff. Some companies are finding that difficult. So they're trying to deal with the growing pains of scaling the business, is the way I put it. So therefore, they're thinking actually less longer term. And I think a good number of people have actually gone to actually think a more short term, short to medium term. If you look at the Eastern philosophy, that would be always creating a business that's going to last beyond you. So it's a 100-year business as opposed to maybe a 20 or 30-year business for retirement. I don't think the Western philosophy has really, or the Western companies have really adapted that side of things. It's more around, okay, we've got a product, we got a service. It depends on what business you fall into. If it's professional services, their legacy is typically get to the top of the firm, be the managing partner at some point, and then there's going to be other partners going to take over the firm at some point in the future. And I'll cash in my chips at that element, and that's it. And it just rotates, and that's been going on for centuries.
Mm.
That particular format. So they never really think of legacy from the perspective, okay, so what are we doing as a company for the longer growth in the longer term? It's typically short, medium size or medium term. That's just what I observe. Even if you take the top 4 or 5 firms, whether it be consulting or accounting, they would have adopted AI. They would have set up a whole new departments in relation to it. So that's short to medium term. And
Mm.
they see it as being, okay, so there could be a revenue stream coming in from the longer term from that aspect. But they're not really thinking 100 years down the road. They're absolutely not. It's more, they've got a managing partners, and it's how can they make their legacy, or how can they make not their legacy, but how, in some respects, their legacy is their reputation within the firm.
Mm.
That's as much as they see it. So they want to resign or resign as managing partner, showing that they've done a good job, that they've increased revenue, and they've kept the business steady. That's pretty much what they see it as.
Yeah.
The smaller, medium-sized companies, they've just too much going on that they don't really think of building legacy within their company itself. And then you got others which will be the because it's funny because I seem to attract quite a lot of these clients whereby there's always a charity element to them. So they want to be there's always an element that they want to be giving back. They're not
Mm.
just purely focused on the business and themselves and everything's for them. That there's always an element that they want to do something for either their local community or they want to give back in some way. And that can be anything that's really small to quite significant projects that they'll get involved in, or they'll fund because they know they can fund it, but they may not have the time to actually dedicate to it. That's really what I'm seeing, to be honest with you.
There's two things that two ends of the spectrum that pop into my head, which one is, let's say, the spectrum of people I would see. I was at a cool event on Friday just gone, and it was a room full of people that basically raise finance capital. They talk in the millions and billions,
Yeah.
but it loses value, like almost when you're talking about it. And you can now I met some really dynamic people, which is great.
Mm.
And one of the questions I always ask everybody is, what's your favorite thing about what you do, and what's your biggest challenge? And this guy's favorite thing was he was in M&A, and a big part of what he really enjoys is actually bringing someone, which was nice to see the emotional attachment to it, which was bringing someone who's had a business for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, whatever, getting it to a stage where it's saleable or acquirable
Mm.
and helping them do that. And then the difference it makes to that operator. So someone who has gone through the life cycle of so busy they can't lift their head, dire straits, basically keeping the
Mm.
lights on, steadying the ship, diversifying, figuring things out, and then coming out the other end. And another thing you mentioned about it was that the second generation not wanting to take it on or not
Yeah.
wanting to take it on its current form. So what's interesting is we have a short-term way of thinking because I think that's probably just how society instills in us. If you have a pair of shoes and they're tatty or tired, you don't need to repair them anymore. Just go and buy a new pair. Like just get on with it kind of thing. Rather than let's nourish them, let's enrich them, let's give them new life. And what I found interesting about that when the M&A guy said about the legacy piece was, and I always laugh, it's like the this is your life moment, which I say to people is if someone sat down and talked about, oh, the 90s was a tough time, wasn't it? Or the 2000s was tough. They say it in almost nonchalantly for about 60 seconds, and that covers 10 years worth of absolute pain
Yeah.
and suffering. Yeah, they were a difficult time. Turn the page onto it. But you got married, and you're like, what about the 10 years where I'm staring out the window looking for shiny pennies on the street? But what I think when you think of legacy is equally, we are bombarded with stuff. We're like, I think what hits me a lot of the time is how fast purchases are being made. TikTok Live now is where someone sold 5 million's worth in something like 30 seconds, where they just literally hold it up and it's gone, hold it up and it's gone. And that in my mind is an absolute, it throws the whole experience of purchasing on its head. But that's also indicative of what's happening in society, which is you are being bombarded with information, all these things that are attracting your attention, and you don't actually get the chance to pause. And when you do, you probably realize how tired you are. As a solo or a mid-range operator, like you don't have huge swathes of cash to keep the lights on. You're not sitting in a room with 28 advisors who are giving you strategic steps to take for the next 12 quarters. You're hoping you to make payroll at the end of the month or
Yeah.
something happens with the supplier. And when something happens as a supplier, your wish list becomes that's a dream list. That's going in the back of my head.
Yeah.
But the other end of the spectrum, which again, I think we're seeing come to, I suppose, come to the fore now, is actually once legacy has been established, what happens when someone takes on that legacy and what they do with it. So the two examples of late are Ben and Jerry's and Dollar Shave Club. So I don't know if anyone's heard of Dollar Shave Club.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did a phenomenal, for anyone who hasn't,
Yeah.
look it up on YouTube. They did an amazing video about 10 years ago, which was one of the funniest irreverent ads. And it was a phenomenal idea. Like it really was. It was
Yeah.
amazing.
So simple.
So simple, but what people loved about it was completely fly by the seat of your pants, not necessarily PR friendly and everything else because it was very there. And then they were acquired for a substantial amount of money, and then 9 years later, they're now looking to basically come around again and grab onto those roots that got them to this particular point. And Ben and Jerry's, they've now taken a view to step back from the brand because they feel that they're not being heard in terms of the role that they wish to it to maintain or whatever it was. That's the other side of legacy. Yeah,
Yeah.
as in, like,
Yeah.
so in someone's life, and I think the reason I say it is because I was going to forget otherwise. But let's imagine that you take on the concept of what it is you want something to become. As soon as that legacy piece comes into play, that's when you do have to let a percentage of it go because there will be someone else who'll take on what it was you thought it was going to look like, for
Yeah.
better or for worse.
Yeah. It's a different vision.
Yeah.
And that's what you'll get with VCs, or even there's so many other large companies that they changed course because the owner was, as some respects, taken out, and somebody else took over. So either private equity took over, VC took over, or is merged with another company. So it's and then it just changes, and but then they've lost their whole original base of customers. Take Steve Jobs, for example. That's exactly what happened with his company.
Mm.
It changed direction, and the whole kind of culture and the whole ethos within the company was lost. Have gone through exactly the same. The whole management team were removed. They removed all different layers within the company, and their whole premise that Boeing was built on was engineering and safety. That was the whole premise of it. And then it changed into money, and they removed quite a lot of the engineers, and hence the reason why there have been so many failures on aircraft with Boeing, allegedly.
Yeah,
let's,
thrown
let's
allegedly.
recover
We ain't got a legal fund.
So don't sue us. We ain't got the money for it. But yeah, so when you get somebody at the head of the company with a completely different vision and a completely different ethos, it changes the whole culture and the direction of the company for good or for bad.
Yeah, so if I were to say the other side I find fascinating, especially when you take into account, let's say, PE or the role of VCs, that someone has an idea and it's in its infancy and they need fuel, oxygen, and connections to be able to make it work.
Yeah,
Then it goes from this ideological concept to having to make sense from a consumer point of view, having to make sense from a profitability. Not always profitable, because obviously Amazon is not profitable, but you know what I mean?
yeah,
It's still a startup and all these things. But is the role, and this is like playing devil's advocate, when someone looks at, if I have a company and I build it to be acquired or I build it to scale it and then exit it, when I sell it, is there a lot to be said for tough? Like you said, you wanted to do X.
mm,
Someone has had the readies to buy it, and then they've now broken it up into little pieces to make it profitable or to sell it off again or to whatever they're going to do. So the other ideological thing about legacy is probably that it can be skewed by virtue of when I sell this giant entity that's giving me lots of money is going to have the exact same ideals as little old me does, and they don't.
no, absolutely not.
So I think any of the stuff I've seen where people have earned out or they're building into an earn out of a business,
Mm,
there's an inevitability of two things: that the emotional roller coaster of going from being the person who makes all the decisions, who's inherently tethered to the business day and night,
mm,
has been given this buffer. Yes, they've earned it. Absolutely, wouldn't begrudge them. But what I've noticed with a lot of the interviews with people post exit is they're in the business, but they're not of the business. They're there, they're being paid, and in their mind, they're kind of, what? I don't have this. So it's almost like someone saying, okay, you're married now, but you're not really. As
yeah,
in,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
there now. You have to have dinner with them, but you don't get a say. That kind of way.
It's your
I
home,
don't
but
get a
you're
say
not your
anyway,
home.
by the way.
But that's exactly what happens. And it's a lot of reasons why a lot of M&A falls through.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference in values, there's a difference in culture, difference in ethos. Yeah, underlying you're coming together to try and make more money. But if you can't work together, then it's never going to work. So a lot of those actually fall by the wayside.
So if you like, a thing I find interesting is that I'm always trying to take our conversations and make them relatable to someone who's watching it. So I think equally we can also overinflate what legacy means. I suppose I take my view of what legacy is, and I look at the landscape of the market. I look at the business I'm in, which is property, that there's so many changes with behavior, with supply, with technology, everything else, that I've had to reframe what legacy is to me. And I think sometimes people also overlook the everyday legacy stuff, the lifestyle legacy, which is, let's say, for example, before this, I said I was turning a dressing table or a toy chest into a dressing table. I'm also taking orders if you want to go on to answers. Have your order in by October 28th, and you should get it by
For
Christmas.
delivery.
Yeah. Delivery and quality, not a guarantee. But instead of Timu, it's Ratu. But if I was looking at my version of that, let's say my little legacy that I look at that, I take micro components and I say my kids saw me repurpose something for them on a Saturday afternoon, and they saw me make an effort. I involved them in showing them how to cut it and spray paint it, and let's say that's a mini version of a legacy. But when we're talking to people now, people probably maybe in employment might say, "What's legacy to me? I'm reliant on someone else." So, are there any components that you see come into play where you can almost give someone a little bit of a leg up in reframing what legacy might be?
It's a really good question. As you were talking, I was kind of saying, okay, so what does legacy mean to me? And so I was trying to mull through that in my mind as well.
What does it mean to you? Pause on the next bit. What does it mean to you? I'm going to put you on the spot. If I had a spotlight, I'd put it on you.
I think ultimately, and this isn't from an ego perspective, but I did do research into this before, whereby there's an element of you want to be remembered. So when you're gone, there's an element of, and some people will say this from the point of view of, okay, so what will they say at your eulogy? Or
Mm.
what will they say after you've gone? And it's funny, even when we're recording this, that there's an actress just passed away, Diane Keating, over the weekend. And you reflect and you kind of say, okay, all the movies that she was in and how she was as an actress and so on. And one thing that's always said, has always irritated me, is that they tend not to say those things when you're alive. They only say those nice things when you're gone. But there is an element of, I think human nature wants they want to be remembered. And that could be just from your kids or from your family or from your spouse. But there's an element of we want to be continuing on in some shape or form after we've left this body, meat sack that we carry around. So
It's
that to me covers legacy for me. And I
yeah.
suppose it's part of the reason why I keep writing books, because they'll the books will hopefully it will still be here after I've gone. So that's one aspect. For it going back to your question in terms of somebody that's in employment, if they're not getting some sort of involvement within the company, I think you'll find them getting involved in community projects. So again, at the weekend, there was for Focus Ireland, it was Darkness into Light, or what's
Sleep
it?
out. The kind of
Yeah, it
sleep
was
out
a
thing.
sleep out, whatever
Yeah.
the phrase of it is. So that you'll get a number of people involved in that because the charity is close to their hearts in some shape or form. They'll be involved in some sort of volunteering or some sort of organization. But that could be, doesn't necessarily have to be charity. It could be their local GAA. It
Yeah.
could be their local sports club or whatever it might be and so on. And I think that's underlying within them. It's a case of, yeah, they want to be doing something that's not work related, obviously, but they want to, whether it's coaching under 12s or something, they want to have some element of giving back.
Yeah.
And I think nearly everybody would have that feeling that they want to be given back to something or somebody in some shape or form. And some people may not have the resources to do it, hence the reason why they do it in time as opposed to money. And other people can do it in bigger scales and give millions through foundations and all that kind of things. Or it can be small scale in terms of, yeah, it may just be that annual donation that they make in a year. I don't think scale, yeah, look, scale makes a difference just as much as it does in business. But when it comes to an individual giving, scale doesn't really matter, I don't believe, because there is a reading in the Bible in relation to this, but it's all about giving the last penny. But that last penny for somebody that's poor is the equivalent of millions to somebody that's rich. So that's the parable from that aspect of it. So I think everybody does have an underlying desire to make a difference or to be given back in some shape or form.
Yeah, 'cause what's interesting is when you say it, and I think there's the very freeing thing, and Alex Hormozy said it was, in 100 years, someone will be living in your house and they won't have a clue who you were, they won't have whatever. And I think the freeing thing about that is when you set out to do something, just go do it. Just get on with it. Don't let fear hold you back. People have already made their minds up about you, whatever else it may be.
Mm.
But then the other counterintuitive element is you want to be remembered. And I think when I think of that currency after someone has passed, the money element to life or the acquisitions element to life is superfluous after someone has passed because it's all subjective. As in, oh, Rockefeller did X or whoever, and I don't begrudge anyone anything. But I think of it now and I give examples of the people in my life who've passed on, and to this day I still pull something that reminds me of them, or I have a mannerism that someone mentions and they say whatever. And that's the legacy piece as well, which can also be the unconscious side of it. Legacy is that element that someone has created by virtue of being around people, holding themselves a certain way. But it's probably a fascinating thing, like you said. This is one thing that does grind my gears. And it's funny that I was at a funeral and I met a guy who was in the group, and I wouldn't hang around them much anymore or anything like that. But he was talking about a job, and it didn't matter whether I didn't care what he was doing. But when he was telling me what he was doing, I was like, that's amazing. And I was all leaning into your skill set's perfect for this. You're going to meet loads. You're going to excel at this. It's going to be great for you. It's going to get because he was very dismissive. It was this very classic Irish thing of, it's not really doing much for me, and it's I'd like to get paid more and whatever else. And like people around him who don't have their own businesses would have been like, oh yeah, it'll be grand, just have another pint. Whereas I was like, no, I was standing in the church car park and I go, listen, you're doing a great job. You've got kids. You're working your ass off. That's that, like you said, that version of Diane Keaton. I'm a big believer in telling people how great they are while they're here.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
they can view that as, I think the difficulty in society as well is how you think of when people receive something like that. I used to have this attachment that if you gave the game away from an enthusiasm point of view and you weren't coming across as this stoic type, that it was quite weak. Whereas I look at that and I think that guy worked for himself before. He now has that opposite version of when Friday comes, he can switch off. He gets paid on a monthly basis. And I might have been the only person this entire year who's going to say, you're doing a great job. Don't keep going. It's going to be fantastic in whatever form that takes.
Yeah,
And that could be a micro version of that.
yeah.
But there's his own little legacy being built up where for the rest of this year, his legacy is keeping the lights on, making a few quid, and he gets to regroup,
Mm.
let's say.
Yeah.
But society probably doesn't lend itself to that either because we're very, hi, I'm Andrew. What can I get from you? Hi, I'm this. Oh, you don't look like you have this unconscious thing. You meet somebody, shake their hands. They're not enough. They don't have what I want, and I'll move on.
Yeah,
As
yeah,
opposed to
yeah,
let's have a conversation.
yeah, yeah.
That's legacy as well, though.
It is, yeah, yeah. It's in those moments of just making a difference for somebody that you're encountering.
Yeah, it was like a live wake. It's like you said. Yeah, who did it? Coming to America, the movie where your man
Yeah,
Eddie
yeah,
Murphy
yeah.
comes to America. They did a second one where he actually did a live wake or a live because he wanted to see it, and they're all talking about he had like I think he had Aretha Franklin singing all these. What's funny about it was he was there fully alive, and everyone was telling him how great he was. And I thought, yeah, there's a lot to be said for that. There's no
Yeah.
point in having queues out at the door of people that don't meet you for coffee when you're alive. So it's another slightly humorous side. Second movie is not as good as the first, just in case you're thinking of it. The 80s once again was irreverent and unedited. So the modern one was definitely curated to be PC.
Would be allowed.
No, definitely not. No fun.
No.
So on that note of legacy, let me ask you, what is one thing someone could ask themselves when it comes to what legacy means to them? And secondly, what could they do about it?
God, why do you ask tough questions? Uh,
I really like to make people feel uncomfortable on camera. It's what I love.
I'm going to go back to the question of how do you want to be remembered? Because that could be with your family, with your kids, with your spouse, with your own blood family. And in some respects, what do you want to be remembered for? And what do you want people to say about you? And not from an ego perspective. I want to remove that lens that people look through, but more from a point of view of, again, that there's so many people in the public world that you'll have so many people say negative things about them. And everybody makes mistakes. There's no two ways about it. There's always mistakes being made. However, the funny thing you'll find is when they do pass away, the exact same people who come out that have said negative things will come out, oh, that great person was an absolutely amazing person and so on. It's just so ironic and so stupid, really, to be quite honest. But I think if you were to live your life from the point of view of how do you want to be remembered, I think you would make different choices. I think you would do things differently. Do you want to be remembered for the person that stayed in the office 7 days a week, all the hours God sends, and spent very little time with your family? Me personally, no, that's not a choice for me. Maybe a choice for some people, but it's absolutely not a choice for me. So that's the answer to your first question. What was your second question again? I can't remember.
I was too busy trying to think of where I could watch Father of the Bride 1 and 2.
So what's legacy? What's the question you would leave for people?
What would they do with it?
What
Like
would
what?
they
So
do
like,
with it?
yeah, 'cause when you say that, funny enough, I think that's an interesting approach of what legacy means to you and what are you going to do about it. So you're almost giving someone an actual thing of, let's say if it is
Hmm.
the office is where I have my identity, that's my legacy. And then if God forbid someone drops dead, like I saw 4 or 5 obituary RIP things
Oh
on
yeah,
LinkedIn over the weekend, and they were ranging in the ages from 30 to 60. And I
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
there's that post. That's it now.
LinkedIn, I think, should be renamed to RIP.ie, I think, because that's all I'm seeing on my feed as well.
There's a perfect reminder, and I think this is the thing that people forget. Someone listening to this, we all assume this journey is like out there, and you get a 10-year lead up as to where things are going to go. You never know what life has in store. But if you could leave someone today, let's imagine someone has never thought about what legacy is. So you've asked them the question of what does legacy mean to them? Give them one action they could take, however small,
Yeah,
to
I think
what that
follow on
might
from
be.
the same statement in terms of, okay, so what is it that you want to be remembered for? And then,
Okay,
okay, so what out of that then, okay, so what is it that you want to change?
what are you going to do about it?
What's one small step that you can make that would get you towards what it is that you want to be remembered for?
Okay. And then I'm going to ask that question of you and me now. So, what would be something you would like to either change, adapt, do more, or do less of to contribute towards what you perceive your legacy is?
Oh my God, Jeepers, you really are tough questions. An approach I always try and make, honestly, is how can I make a difference in somebody's life? So anybody that I'm encountering, I'm always in the back of my mind, I'm always kind of say, okay, how can I make their life better in some shape or form? It could be something that I say, it could be something that I do, or something that I give them, or whatever. It could be anything from that aspect of it. I have to leave somebody in some shape or form that they're better off in some way. It's could I do any more of that? Yeah, obviously we could all do more and better.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. And I'm even reflecting over the last week in terms of different people I encountered and all kinds of things and different messages and emails that I got from different people. And it's just, yeah, I think it's just doing more of that, to be quite honest with you. I wouldn't change what I'm doing. I think it's just do more of it. And it's not going from the point of view of, it's very subtle. It's an intention that I go into conversations with, as opposed to, hey, I'm here to change your life. It's not. It's actually just, no, it's just an intention that I have in my mind that I would hope that I deliver on 99% of the time. Because I know there's going to be other occasions that, yeah, it's just not going to happen. But that's, yeah, they're my thoughts. Now turn the table on you. You answer the same questions then.
I think I want to help more people reach. So it's twofold. Help more people reach their potential in whatever way that means,
Mm.
but then also connect more people. And I think the more I've noticed from my standpoint, my natural thing is to want to connect people. And it's not like one of these
Marriage guidance.
no. You know what you should do? You need to. No, it's when I like. It's not like one of those MLM things where I say I try and connect as many people as I can
Oh,
and
yeah.
hope I make money from it. But what I love about it is I had a few coffees last week and I sent off 5 or 6 emails over the weekend, just connecting interesting people.
Mm.
No, don't need to be included in the rest of the thread from it. And the more I do that, the more I realize that the world doesn't have a lot of people who do that because a lot of people
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
don't understand. And I think if I can help more people reach their potential in a variety of ways, it could be a conversation that gets them to go for their dream, or it could be finding a property that takes the weight off so they can start living, but also connecting people. And I think to counteract a faceless world that AI is playing a role in, technology is playing a role in, remote working is playing a role in, I want to connect more people. Here's John. He's a really fascinating guy with a great outlook.
Do a replay on that one.
Oh yeah, so
You just want to connect
here's
more people.
yeah, so basically just it's about connecting more people. And I think it's about doing it genuinely, wholesomely, and without expectation. And I think if more people saw how they could be kind to people while they're alive and connect them with other interesting people, that would enrich a lot of people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's us for this week.
What's the one action you're going to leave people with?
Oh, more coffees. Let's keep it very simple. I think if I was to look at it from my standpoint, and I think a very simple action point without it being a giant vision board of whatever else. My thing is, if I can layer in one extra coffee a week, that's an extra conversation I've had, which is, and that could turn into an agony uncle session where someone shares things with me that they never thought they would. There's a difference I could have made. And I think nowadays, especially if you are looking online and someone watches a video and someone says, I've only had 150 people view this video. If you had 150 people in a room listening to you, that's a hell of a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that probably brings us to a good conclusion, which is legacy is means a whole load of different things to a load of different people, but you don't have to be Rockefeller to take a view to what legacy is. And anyone who's listening or reading this or watching this, if you're involved in your local GAA, your football, or your family, whatever it may mean, you are contributing towards legacy is to you. And I think it's important for those watching and listening. Ask yourself what that may mean to you and what could be the next steps you could take to contribute towards that and build for that future you and what people might think. And that could be business, it could be an acquisition, or it could be what someone says at a dinner party in 10 years' time. And thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
And that's it for another episode of Beyond Just Business. If it gave you something to think about, or it helped you see things a little differently, we're delighted. But make sure you're following so you don't miss out on the next episode. Stay curious, keep questioning, and we will see you next time.